Hey guys, it's Holly Tate, Vice President of Business Development at Vanderbloemen. And today I am joined by my colleague, Vice President of Sales and Client Relations here at Vanderbloemen, Sarah Robbins. And we are going to dive into the question of how do you use technology to work effectively remotely? We have been doing a series of webinars and we've gotten this question over and over again. And so I wanted to spend some time with Sarah and dive into how our team at Vanderbloemen uses some technology best practices to make sure we don't skip a beat as much as possible while we're working remotely. So Sarah, let's jump in. First of all, why is technology important while we're working remotely? What does it help with?
Yeah, so I would say the two big things that you want to think through when you're thinking about technology and working remotely is communication. It's incredibly important to communicate in all times of your life, but when you're not physically next to someone, a lot gets lost in translation. So communication and then collaboration. I think these are two big things that Vanderbloemen does a lot of, and I think a lot of people do. We want to communicate well, and we want to collaborate well. But sometimes the thought is, can I do that well when I'm not sitting next to someone? The answer is yes. And we'll, I guess, probably go into the details of that.
Absolutely. You can communicate effectively. It just takes intentionality and a little bit of planning. So what are some key tools that we at Vanderbloemen use and that we're seeing our clients use to really be able to communicate and collaborate really well remotely?
Yeah, so we have a few, I'll tell you a few that we use and then a few alternatives. And again, the dream for us is if we can find something that you can communicate and collaborate in together. So that's a special fix for it. So a big one for us is Slack. That's heavy on the communication side. I'm sure a lot of people are talking about it. Some of you might use it. There is a way that you can use it really poorly. So for example, at a friend of mine, their work just adopted Slack. And they showed it to me. I said, this is a mess. Let me help you. And
Awesome.
Notifications were on for everything. They created so in Slack, you can message directly. You can create groups channels is what you call them. And those channels can be private or public. And basically what this group did is they created about 10 groups. So 10 groups, and everybody was invited to all of those groups. Everybody was invited to the finance group. Everybody was invited to the communications group. Everybody was, so he was getting 10,000 Slack notifications a day, which is unreasonable. So all that to say, Slack's a really, really good tool if you use it well. Just a couple quick pointers, and Holly, jump in if I'm missing any big ones. Number one, keep it minimalistic. So you don't need 50 different groups like I just described. Who needs to be in the group? That's important. So keep it minimalistic. The other thing is have rules around what the expectations are in Slack. So like if I Slack you, the thought is that you would return a Slack to me within X amount of time. We have that at Vanderbloemen. So like ideally if we're Slacking you, try and get back to me within the hour. Another rule is if Slack is your communication tool for messaging people, that needs to be it. So I don't want a Slack from you and then a text message from you. And then email from you, all about the same thing.
Yes.
So pick what it is that you're going to communicate, where it is that you're going to communicate, and stick to it. So for us, like we, at Vanderbloemen, we don't text each other unless it's like after hours and I'm texting Holly about what her husband is cooking because he's a great cook and we need help with cooking advice because we're stuck at home now.
Right.
So then I would text her and not Slack her. Another thing in Slack is that there's a ton, I'm not going to get into the details here, but there's a ton of I'm looking at it right now, little add-ons that you can do. It's sort of like little tidbits to help you communicate more throughout your day with the people around you. So for instance, you can sync up your Gmail calendar. So like right now I'm looking at Holly's and I can see if I were to go type a message to her, it's saying that she's in a meeting right now. So I can expect her to not respond within an hour because I know what's going on her calendar.
Yeah.
You can sync your Zoom up to Slack. Just the other day, we were having trouble with something and our Zoom is synced up. There's a quick little keyboard, what do you call that? Keyboard shortcut?
Shortcut, yes.
Yeah, a keyboard shortcut, and it popped up a Zoom meeting. We were good to go. Another thing about Slack, I think a lot of people, it takes them a while to find, is that you can call through Slack, which is so great. So any of you who are tired of getting a Zoom link in your life, which I think most of you are, and having to type in a password or something like that. And so if you would just like to quickly talk to someone and see their face, calling through Slack is so great. You can share your screen in Slack. You can do multiple callers in Slack. So it's just a huge tool that has made a huge difference. You can also collaborate on projects. Speaking of collaboration, I would say that doing your G Suite, using G Suite for collaboration and projects, that's a big one.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything, before we move to that, anything I'm missing in Slack that you think would be helpful for people to hear?
Oh, I think you covered it. The only other thing I would say, which you touched on this, the calendar at the top, but you can change those. So if you're eating lunch, we have members of our team that'll put a piece of pizza, so it's just really easy, a great way to just say, this is what I'm doing and my availability, which is super great for communication and collaboration across the organization. That was great. Slack is fantastic. Oh, and if you're on Microsoft, a lot of people have Teams. So we might all not be on Slack, you might be on Teams, but whatever the tool is, a direct message collaboration and communication tool that is not text messaging is a really helpful way to streamline communication and keep personal and business or ministry separate. So Sarah, let's dive into, you mentioned, go ahead. Sorry.
That made me think of two things that I thought might be helpful.
Yes.
Holly said, pick a communication platform as opposed to just text messaging each other. I think a lot of you might be saying, why don't I just iMessage or text message each other? It's already, if you're using Apple products, it's already on my phone. So a couple quick reasons, like Holly said, keeping personal and your private time separate. I know that sounds weird, and if you're maybe work at a church or a very cozy nonprofit, that seems almost funny that would will it overlap so much anyways? Trust us. Like, your life will be better if you, especially right now, because you probably feel like you're working all the time because your home is your workplace, like the rest of us. If you could separate those two, it will be so much easier. Another big thing is everything that you do in Slack is recorded and searchable. So the amount of times that I have had to go back into Slack and say, what was that we were talking about? Or who was that person? Or I know I got a phone number from them, and where was that phone number? And then I can type and I can find it, or I can find a document. So that's a really important thing for Slack that I think would be really helpful to consider why you need to do that versus just text messages. Anyways, okay, go on.
Absolutely. No, super helpful. Okay, so the next one, you mentioned this already, G Suite. So what is G Suite, and let's unpack it together.
Yes, so G Suite is Google's suite of collaboration tools. So think about Microsoft Word, all of those sort of things, all of those type programs in an online format that other people can collaborate on. So right now, for example, Holly and I and several other people on the business development team are sharing several documents. Like, they look like a Word document, but several documents where we're adding in ideas for content, adding in ideas to help some of our clients out. I'm sharing currently a Google Sheet, which is like a spreadsheet, with several other team members in our finance department and in our client candidate relations department. And we're talking about our clients and adding in notes and stuff that's going on, contact information. But there's 7 or 8 people in there at one time live adding stuff, and we're able to move so much quicker instead of emailing something, getting feedback, emailing it, downloading it, all that kind of stuff. So G Suite is super helpful for collaboration on projects, documents. You can comment, so it's not necessarily just adding stuff. You can add comments, and you can have a whole conversation in there about it. You can make changes that are trackable. My other favorite thing about G Suite is that you can have a G Suite document, let's say a document that looks like a Word doc. It's not, you see where I'm going with this, just trying to explain it, but it looks like a Word doc. And I can go through and see all of the different iterations that we've had over the last 8 months, year, 2 years, 3 years. So it keeps track of all of the changes that you've made through it. And that's really helpful to see maybe where you came or where you're going, or we had some change later on and I can't find it. What was it? So it's all tracked there. And then the other thing that's nice about it is you can link between documents. So I have a document right now that has links to sheets, to spreadsheets. I have one that has links to PowerPoint in the Google Sheet PowerPoint. So there's just, the whole tool just collaborates within each other.
Absolutely. And Google Drive is kind of the backbone of all of the Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, etc. And one thing I love about that is the team element. It isn't paid upgrade. You have to have, it's Google Drive for Teams, but this is really helpful, especially if there's turnover on your team. I mean, we've run into this at Vanderbloemen before as different members of the team come and go. Their Word docs would get stuck in their email, and then no one would have access to them. And we'd have to recreate, spend time, precious time, which equals money when you're paying your staff, to recreate documents. And so to have it all there on a live Google Doc that anybody can jump in and change, and you can control permissions. So, you know, you as the owner of that document, you can give certain people different permissions, but put it in a team drive. So that way, if I'm on vacation, but Sarah needs a document, she knows she can go to that drive and it's all there in one place. So not only does it cut back on your inbox, it also helps streamline and protect the organization moving forward. So all of that documentation is in a place where anybody can access it at any time. So I really believe that the Google Suite is the main reason why we're able to run such lean teams at Vanderbloemen, because we can be so productive and cut down on so much wasted time of pinging back and forth trying to find documents and all of that. All right, Sarah, so we've got Slack, and then we talked about G Suite. What about video calls? This is a huge component. A lot of people aren't used to video calls. It's something we've been doing at Vanderbloemen for a long time. So walk us through some different options. Well, why video is important, and then some different options for doing video calls.
Yeah, I wish that like, a month and a half ago I would have bought stock in Zoom. My life would be so much better. But video calls are helpful for a lot of reasons. Right now, you're probably forced to do a lot of video calls. So you know, why would I want to keep doing this? What is this going to look like in the future? So here are a few thoughts on video calls. Zoom is really the industry standard. They have invested in technology in a way that a lot of people haven't. I know that there's a lot going on out there right now about privacy issues, and that really stinks. And I know they're working on it. Unfortunately, when you're kind of top of your game and first to market and you're moving fast, trying to catch up with things, stuff falls through the cracks. That said, I would say their tech, and we have experimented with a lot of these, their tech is, we really believe, the best out there. So if you can do Zoom, I would recommend Zoom. Skype, you can do Skype for Business. That is a good option as well. I think there's a lot of international groups that tend to use Skype just because that's really where it blew up. You can even use FaceTime. Again, the thing about FaceTime is I would try to eliminate that if possible and stick with a more business focused platform. That goes back to what we were saying about Slack. FaceTime is what I did with my husband's grandmother the other night. FaceTime is what I did between my baby and her aunt the other day. So that's what we use FaceTime for. If we can do Skype and things like and Zoom, then there's just a lot of different options. In Zoom, you can share your screen. In Zoom, you can record the call. That's what we're doing right now.
Yes.
In Zoom, even when you record your call, you can get a transcript of that call. So written down, so you can pass on to people. There's just a lot more to it that we would really recommend. And then if you are going to do a video call, well, number one, I do think video calls are really important. At the end of the day, we've got a spectrum. In person is best. If I can see your face, it's better. If I can hear your voice, it's better. If you're emailing me or texting me, I don't know the tone of your voice. I don't know what your face looks like. You have to use a million emojis or exclamation points sometimes. So how can we slide the scale closer to it in person? So that's why we would recommend doing video calls. Maybe not all the time. Sometimes you want to be able to, I don't know, right now, maybe sweep your floors or hold a baby while you're on a call, because we're all trying to survive right now. But when possible, I would really recommend doing video calls. Another thing about it, I'm sure you've heard this, but if you'll look at Holly and I's current ambiance, these are not on accident. We have light hitting us in a certain way. You can see that we have earbuds in.
That's right. Yes.
It's okay if they have the string, but I would really recommend earbuds over shout talking. And then having that person shout talking at you through the speakers of your computer. I know it's not always possible.
Even though I tend to shout talk even with AirPods in.
Just in life.
That's
yes,
just me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been actually it's been about a month and a half since I've heard you shout talk.
That's right.
I kind of miss it. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, so I would recommend some sort of ear device so that you can talk clearly and communicate well. And then like this isn't always possible, but I have a door closed. You know, there's a 4-month living in my house right now. Her voice could pop onto this at any moment. There's not much you can do, but do consider, you know, those sort of things. And then you'll also notice that you're not getting an upshot view of Holly and I. It's for two things, both for vanity's sake, but also it's not distracting for the person to look at. So try and make it nice.
Yes, great advice. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for walking us through this. We've got Slack, we've got the G Suite, and then video calls like Zoom, Skype, etc. So thank you so much for setting up everybody for success on how to work effectively remotely using technology. Thanks, Sarah.